Welcome to the Agency Uplift Podcast, the podcast all about the unique experience of growing a digital agency, the ups, the downs, the challenges, the learnings. I'm your host, Sean Lang, agency owner of over 7 years and co-founder of Social Commerce Club. And today I'm joined by Casandra Barrett, founder of Handled Operations Consulting. Now, they build the systems and strategy to make running your agency feel as natural as your expertise. Casandra, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I think this is going to be an interesting conversation because you're not necessarily an agency owner per se, but your journey has been kind of similar and you interface and work directly with agency owners. So I think you're going to have a lot of interesting insights. But before we dive into those insights, I'd love to hear what led you to now. How did you get into working with agencies?
Yeah. And also to branch off of that as I answer this question, one thing I have noticed within operator communities in having discussions with people that are in this industry doing like what we do, there is a commonness in the story that I'm hearing where you start off in one place and just linearly grow into operations. It wasn't this clear, like, I went and got a business administration degree, and then I started working here, and then I did this, and then it's not linear. People tend to just sort of gradually build into their specialist zones and operations, and especially with agencies. And so that was absolutely what happened with my side of things. When I first started off as a business owner, launching for myself, it was as a freelancer. I started off as a virtual assistant, literally just like general admin. And the more I embedded myself into businesses and then naturally just grew with them because I was always somebody that could like synthesize information out of a situation by sort of like, rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like sequentially, I kind of just like look at the whole thing and then like, boom, okay, I know what we have to do. So it started off like virtual assistant, and then it was OBM, and then it was operations. Oh no, and then it was operations manager. And then now I'm more in that operations consultant, director of operations. Like the title to me does not matter. It's more so about understanding the scope of the role with the general goal being how can we scale your business to go past 1 million? Or once it's there, keep going to where you're trying to get to.
Right. Very cool. So what was the moment where you realized that you wanted to, or maybe that you were building towards something greater than just freelancing and actually building this actual sort of agency support consultancy?
So early on, one of my first roles, I came into working within an operations management agency. And it was just me and the founder to start. She had been sort of doing like operations management for different clients that had came to her when she pivoted into a different direction in her business. And in that first year, it grew from just us to we hired up to like 8 people because she was building pod structures that, I'm sure you have experience with that model within agencies. It just
Yep.
works, right?
Yep.
And so as we were building that, I went from being her VA to being more so like the operations assistant within the business, building out all of the documentation and processes, leading the hiring campaigns, just like building that business in real time. And so understanding what that looked like and just basically seeing how much of a fun puzzle it was to solve, put that light bulb up for me where it's like, oh, okay, this is where my focus goes. I think when people start out freelancing, either they are translating like a really defined, clear skill set, like design or copy or software development or sales. And then they're just taking the job and putting it into the market and then like moving along with it to figure things out. Whereas for me, it was more like I discovered it as I was doing a million different things. And then the second it clicked, I was just like, oh, it's operations. Okay. And then I followed the thread.
Very, very interesting. Yeah, that sounds like very, very similar to a lot of the journeys of different agency owners that I speak to as well. So what are some of
Mhm.
the most common, I'll say common opportunities you see within agencies when you first sort of dig in, or maybe even pulling back before opportunities? What are some of the big pain points that you generally come across?
It's interesting you started with opportunities and then pain point, and I got hung up there because I was thinking what they think is the pain point often isn't the opportunity.
They're kind of
And
one and
that's
the
like,
same.
yeah, absolutely. And I find there's this tendency to want to keep up with the speed But when you first come in to try and optimize things, there has to be like a little bit of an audit process and figuring out what is and what isn't working and stopping and pausing for just a second so that we can get a lay of the land, and then choosing or building up scaffolding to build up a bit more structure and figuring out how to continue to build on that to build momentum back up. When people don't have solid operational foundations, it's because they just sort of had duct tape solutions to keep going quickly, 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 quickly,
Yep.
quickly.
Yep.
And then eventually they get to a certain point of growth where either the business, them, or their team is going to break if they don't pause and take a lay of the situation. And they find the biggest pain point or hesitancy or thing to address first is dealing with that innate drive and need I see for these successful growing agencies to like understand, not just say they understand logically, but emotionally like process, like, no, we actually have to slow down and like change how we're doing certain things. Production's not going to stop, but like, do we need to sign 3 more clients this month when we're trying to rewrite the entire operational structure of the business? No, no. And you don't need to take it on because your COO is like completely burnt out. Doesn't make
Mm.
sense.
So yeah, that's something that I see a lot for sure, and I've definitely experienced and lived through. So in these situations where it's very, very difficult for an agency to walk away from deals that are on the table, do you have any suggestions in terms of how we can not necessarily walk away from those, but perhaps push them off a month so that we can better serve them once we can actually onboard them?
Yeah. Before, like, my first thing that came to mind was raise your rates. Because when in this specific thing that I'm thinking of, people are banging at the door. If you've got people at the bottom rung of your client pool that aren't in alignment with where you're going with how you fulfill services, raise your rates. And if those people drop off, then you now have room for the next batch of people. Alternatively, I think that just creating like onboarding with a delayed project start date can function really, really well. You can say, look, we're gonna get started. We're gonna do the thing. Here's when we have the capacity to get going, and here's what that looks like. So you can still bring them in, but just have strong boundaries on like, we are working together. They have that client experience of the onboarding, but then obviously if you don't have capacity for production, you're still starting with them, just delaying it a little tiny bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it really highlights the constant tension between sales and operations. Sales wants to go, go, go. And operations often is saying, how do we do this? Explain to me how we do this. And sales is like, well, this is the only reason we exist is to bring you deals. And so you need,
Yeah.
you need to serve or deliver the services that we're selling. But absolutely, we need to make sure that we actually have enough time and enough bandwidth and enough, honestly, like quality to be able to actually serve those deals or those clients, those services that are coming down the pipe. Absolutely. So I'm assuming that this is a very, very common issue that you see when you first dive into an agency.
Yeah. I think it's always either I don't have enough time to go and get sales, or I don't have time to onboard and fulfill all of the things that are trying to come my way. And to that effect, um, it's also a lot of really, really, really quick momentum, but then also sometimes I see a lot of hyperfixation on detail, of making things perfect, of disguising perfectionism as a high standard
Mm,
and using it to put off things that you're saying are really important and are gonna take you where you wanna go, but it's like we're month 3 and you actually haven't really moved the dial on it. Like, why are we not
yeah.
doing it if it's important?
Yeah. One thing that I'm always thinking in the back of my mind is perfection is procrastination. I can often get very, very enamored with the idea of getting to perfection. Before making a decision, I might want to put in many rounds of research just to make sure I'm making the right decision and polish that document for the 5th or 6th time just because, maybe if I tweak 2 or 3 more words, it's actually going to have a better end result. And at the end of the day, we have to realize that we're here to do the thing, and
Mhm.
and anything that's getting in the way of that is, at the end of the day, it's not it's not serving us at all. We have to have a little bit more trust in ourselves and just realize, yeah, perfection doesn't exist. And at the end of the day, like our clients want execution and our clients want results, and they don't expect perfection. And if you've brought in a client that does expect perfection, it's probably not going to be a very good agency client relationship, because if you've pre-sold them on the idea of perfection, you're already fighting a losing battle. I mean, we're all human. We're all
Yeah.
human. So what's one thing that you would tell agencies within their first year, people who are just figuring it out and they're looking for those early levers with which to sort of springboard forward?
The first thing that's coming to mind for me is just focus on what you're gaining along the way. Like, look at it like you're spiraling upwards, you're failing forwards. And look at volume, like trust yourself to have the quality, but then look at volume of delivery. Because the biggest thing I see when people first start out is self-doubt. Oh, I don't know if I can reach out to this many people, or it's hard to talk to that many people, or I just need to tweak this another time, or I'm just finishing the website, or I'm just figuring out the packages. And it's like, you could do it in 20 minutes and then put the text in and then hit send. And part of what you were saying earlier, I really resonated with, in that people feel sometimes that they need to be polished and put together and show up in a certain way. But the first step, the first time you do the thing, is just version 1. And you want to speed up the amount of time in between your version 1 and your version 50 that is the winning solution that gets you to where you want to be. The more you can delay the time in between the amount of iteration you do on things, without judging yourself for making it look super good, because to be honest, nobody cares about your shitty website when it was shitty. Excuse my language. And the only people that matter care about your website when it's perfect. So, like, what does it matter? Just keep doing the thing.
Totally. That's so true. So there's one, not one, there's many agency owners, but one that I'm thinking of in particular who has recently launched an agency, and he was looking for advice and also web designers to design his website. And I chimed in, and a number of other people basically said, at this stage, you don't need to worry about this. At this stage, the best thing that you can do is just to have a website and not worry about perfection. Just build the website knowing that everything that you do, you're going to completely change. But at this stage in the game, you don't know what it's going to look like. So why would we focus so much time and effort and energy on something that literally you're going to change in 2 weeks anyways? Like sign up for Squarespace or Wix or something really uncool and unsexy in the web
Exactly.
development sphere, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You just want something that your clients can resonate with, and they're going to resonate more with, whether they see themselves in the ICP and in your positioning, rather than if you chose a blue button or a purple button, or if the border was 5 pixels versus 3 pixels. That stuff is
Mm-hmm.
in the early days, especially, is not going to matter. You just need to get more at bats. I think that's
Yes.
one really key learning for me that I'm sure that you've seen as well, is in the early stages, especially in the first year, your goal should be to maximize your volume and your number of at bats and your learnings and your data that you're taking in. That way you can change things, because this is a changing game. This is always changing. Like, I've been in the
Mm-hmm.
agency space for over 7 years, and I think that the agency has changed at least every 3 months, if not every 2 months. It's always changing. And if it's not changing that frequently, you should be asking yourself, like, shit, am I still doing the right thing? Am I still doing the right thing for the people that I'm serving? Because, I mean, look at the world, look at the economy, look at the industry. Everything is changing all the time, and we have to be able to change with it, really.
Yeah. I think that moderating your ability to be excited about that versus um, not really processing like fear around that. I saw a fantastic post the other day saying, basically, as sad as it sounds, like, in economic instability should actually excite you as a business owner, because it just is opportunity to solve more problems. There will be more
Absolutely.
problems that come up. You can solve more of them, and that actually gives you fantastic potential for upside.
Absolutely. And it's not necessarily that you're excited about the problems themselves, but
Yes.
the fact that you have opportunity to create impact for other people. And that's, at the end of the day,
Yes.
that's why we're here. We're here just
Yeah,
to create
fantastic to
positive
hear.
impact.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Very, very cool. So in terms of your journey, what have been the biggest learnings for you
Mhm.
putting together an agency operations consultancy?
I think that it's genuinely adopting tools to adapt to different personality types. Because at the end of the day, I'm in charge of who I work with, and that's fantastic because I tend to work with people that we're complementary or similar, and so there's a lot of ease in communication. But specifically when it goes into managing different teams and being fractional and co-founders that maybe are very different from each other, having a strong ability to help people preserve their own identity but work collaboratively, and being able to understand the emotional drivers behind why people or someone is saying something or doing something, and being able to look at a situation and understand what do they feel is in it for them and how can I help them get there. Team and people and communication and psychology, I think that it is like the number one most important thing in business, period. Literally, we're all just people. So you
Mhm.
need to understand people. And I think that that's the biggest learning, developing by experiencing. And then, like, I was journaling about this the other day. I call my brain like a compression algorithm, where, like, where I was saying before, where rather than going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I look at the whole thing and then, like, something just clicks into place. It's like that. More and more and more and more repetition of what works and what doesn't, you can immediately start being like, oh, okay, this person is that, and this is what's happening here. The more you can do that, the better your life will get and the faster you will grow.
So that's really, really interesting. And that is definitely a huge factor in this business model in general. I mean, it's basically people on all sides. It's not a product-based business. It's just a people-based business. It's people doing business with people, and there's some tools mixed in there and there's some processes, but at the end of the day, it's really the people that make those processes work. So it's people all the
Yeah.
way down. Um, how would you suggest people, again, there's the word, how would you suggest people go about optimizing for what you're talking about, sort of like learning the ins and outs of how to understand, folks' needs and motivations and wants, etc.
Yeah. It starts from their entry point of sitting down and thinking about that for themselves. If you're more analytical, so more logically brained, you process based off of um you speak in push and pull, sort of like when it comes to money, you would consider what am I going to get out of this? If you're somebody that is more collaborative and emotional, like for each different sort of archetype or psychological profile, what they need is different. But my main piece for clarity would be focus on understanding yourself and then find other experts in areas where that you're struggling. So this is a mental health conversation because depending on how healthy and regulated you are as a person, that's going to be a direct correlation in between what does your career and your business look like. Sometimes people are fantastic at trucking along and being very, very, very high performing and successful in corporate as their own business owner. But when they stop and pause and look at the mental health pieces, when it's not just like what can they physically and mentally do, but what's happening emotionally, and then who is the best person for them to help? Is it is it a business coach that helps check them? Is it literally a therapist? Is it counseling? Is it going to a certain kind of group? Grief counseling? Like, it's a mental health conversation, and people know themselves best and where to start based off of that.
Interesting. So you would think that that's probably something that that the agency owner themselves needs to understand and be good at spotting within their team.
I'm not saying like practically applied. Like, you guys need to be worried very, very, very deeply in about mental health, what's going on with each. You're not their therapists. Maybe I misunderstood the question. What I'm saying here is understanding other people starts with understanding yourself and being an
Got it.
emotionally regulated person, and being starting from that point helps you start to see and look for tools that make sense to how to use that collaboratively within teams.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense for sure. And it's really important as an owner to really know yourself, to really understand yourself, and also know how you fit into the overall ecosystem of humans that is your agency. Because at the end of the day, we're just a bunch of people, and we're all pulling in the same direction, trying to achieve impact for ourselves and also for our clients. Over the last year, what are some, or maybe even what's one pattern or trend that you've seen within the agencies that you work with?
It goes back to like the earlier point. I see people pushing past their limits, which is important for
Mm,
like development. But then it puts things at risk with team because if you're always stressed and always doing a lot and always going a million miles an hour and you're so dialed in, sometimes you can sort of lose track of your surroundings. And so I that's what I've been seeing a lot of going in really, really deep and pushing, and that's beautiful, but also stopping and like looking around at the scenery is missing. And it's a little esoteric, but it's because it's energetic and it's not this clear cut like here is exactly the technique that you can use to improve your retention. It's energetic and it's based off of internal drivers.
it requires empathy. I think is a really important thing here. Is at the end of the day,
Yeah.
we need to lead with empathy, and we need to be aware that not everything is a machine with an input and an output. Sometimes there's just, yeah, absolutely. You've talked quite a lot about hiring and recruiting on LinkedIn. I'd love to just hear a little bit about your
Mhm.
philosophy and how you go about bringing new people on to a business or an agency.
Yeah. So it's not just LinkedIn. You would be surprised to hear that while that's fantastic specifically for one-to-one recruiting and has been very useful in me finding higher level roles for placement, the majority of the roles that I've hired for in agencies, because I worked for something of a like so I had the operations agency and then I had a virtual assistant agency that did like a little bit of everything. Some admin, some social, some web design, Facebook groups. You would be surprised to see how many Facebook groups you can find fantastic virtual assistants, social media managers, copywriters, web designers,
So
graphic designers.
let's
Yeah.
let's let's dive into that, because I haven't had anybody talk yet about recruiting from Facebook groups. Can you just break that down a little bit? What is your process for finding those people?
Mhm.
And also, I think that people interact a little bit differently on every single platform. So how does it look on Facebook groups?
Yeah, so this is what it looks like. There's gonna be a variety of different places that you wanna have hyper targeted based off of the specific kind of role you're looking for. That's an active community, usually branching off of some kind of business that has an education model based off of where you're putting this job up. So job opportunity, that's what you usually put hashtag job opportunity in these different Facebook groups. So one that I just saw something in today for a fractional COO was, I think it's the Ops Authority, DOOs, OBMs, Facebook group. And this is someone that has a certification. So there's like the OBM school certifier, there's Ops Authority, there's just different virtual assistant courses, places that teach for roles that you would be looking for, where there might be a virtual assistant who has a lot of experience managing communities or doing lead gen in the DMs or for sales group, people that have a lot of experience closing on calls. And at some point, they did some certification through this place, and that's how you're targeting towards them. So you pick one, and then you look for how frequently are they posting, what are the quality of the posts, how many people are in there. For one role that I just finished onboarding for a client, I think I used 8 Facebook groups, but I had a pool of like 200,000, something like that.
Wow.
And yeah, and you get the only thing is that you get a lot of applicants that way. And you got a lot of underqualified applicants that way. But because of some of the systems and just like ways of fielding through that I've developed, it pulls the best ones to the top. And then the filtration system just makes it so that by the time you get to your 2 to 4 interviews, if depending on, what you need to learn or get out of them in an actual conversation, It's a very streamlined way, specifically of finding people at lower entry points for pay. And I don't like the way that came out, but I do find that if you're looking for a really good, like $30 an hour or below virtual assistant, using this method is fantastic. And so for people that have concern with that, that have a really hard time finding good people, this is going to be on the smaller side of team building, reliable, really good. That's where I've had a lot of success for that particular role.
Interesting. Yeah. So I'm curious to hear, and you don't need to go into major detail, but as someone who's set up a lot of my own recruiting systems, I'm
Mhm.
curious to hear sort of maybe some of the basic filters that you set up, because obviously when you post a job, especially these days, there are all sorts of AI tools that allow you to bulk apply to jobs that you have no business
Mhm.
applying to. And of course, us as business owners, we don't want to take even a single second looking at those applicants.
Mhm.
So what are some of the filters that you set up
Yeah.
to make sure that we don't end up wasting our time with those?
Yeah. So it's not going to be the most fruitful answer because through trial and error, I developed something of a talent database that helps me so that I don't need to go through that each and every time.
Well,
So
I
usually
love that. If you've developed a talent database, maybe let's talk about that. How did you develop a talent base? Because that's actually that's incredible. If you have a pool from which you can fish,
Mhm.
that's high. That's very high value.
Yeah. So this is what it looked like. It starts with the mass application. So like let's say I put out for I'll give you one of the larger ones I remember doing. 4 different roles, but for the same business. And there was like, I don't know, like 1,200 applicants or something across all the 4 different roles. So it starts with them. For one, I filter based off of small keywords so that people that don't put the right subject, don't use the word that I asked for, it just automatically goes to delete. Like I'm just not going to read it. So that's a great way to save. From looking at like checking, I noticed that like at least 10% of people that weren't being watchful just like automatically got deleted. So I always appreciated that. From there, it's really easy and quick. Cover letter. What does their website look like? What does their portfolio look like? What's on it? How are they selling themselves? Super simple. Then you can move on to the next one if it's not going to be a yes. And then those top candidates have like a form that they fill out that gets reviewed. And then there's an interview process. So I focus on speed with it so that people aren't in these long drawn out processes. So that is what funneled people into my top tens across multiple different hiring campaigns for different roles with skill sets. When people get to top 10, whether or not they move forward in the role, they're so good that I can talk to them about adding them into my talent database, whether or not they work with us. And then usually even on top of that, there's going to be another 20 or so that were also quite good, just not good for the role that I was trying to fill.
Right.
So
Right.
doing that over and over and over and over again, and then excuse me, and then developing tagging systems to understand like here's who goes here, and not just title, but like skill set, and then tech stack, and then application like history, like finding different ways of tagging for that just made it a lot easier. And I'm trying to like improve it now. I'm thinking about using an actual HR software, but for now it's like a spreadsheet and some automations and click up.
That is awesome. Yeah, I'm just thinking about for myself now. I would probably build something like that out in Airtable just because you can automate the heck out of it. But how maybe final question, because we're getting towards the end here,
Yeah.
but this is fascinating. How do you keep that talent pool warm? Because I know it's not enough to just add them to a list. They
Mhm.
might not ever respond to you afterwards. How do you make sure that they're still somewhat engaged so that they're actually still a hiring opportunity for you?
Yeah. So that's actually why I left it in ClickUp versus didn't shift over to Airtable. Also, just because it's something that slowly happened over time. It wasn't this intentional thing I've sat down to like really put together yet. Just happened. With ClickUp, you get the emails function and you can automate it based off of different statuses. And so what I do is I consistently will actually email them out and be like, hey, do you want to stay on the list? Has anything changed? Have you updated your portfolio? How's your website looking? Anything you'd like me to add? Has anything changed with how many clients you're looking for? Because it can go up and go down. The biggest and most important thing is like, I don't want a big list full of people that are booked out or that have quit and switched to something
Yeah,
else entirely. I want people that I know are still looking and in what they're looking for. So I leverage the automation features of that to keep up to date with things.
that's really, really cool. That is such an actionable thing that I hope most agency owners are taking note of and planning to build for themselves. Casandra, this has been a fantastic discussion, definitely a little bit outside of the norm, but super, super valuable for our listeners. Where can people
Yeah.
find out more about about you and what you do?
Yeah. So handled operations consulting, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, the website where you can find links to um, absolutely everything is going to be handledoc.com. All the socials are there. I post every day on my personal LinkedIn account.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Casandra.